Good morning. So today I wanted us to cover 5 of the most difficult questions on faith. These are 5 of the most challenging questions you can ask a Christian, a believer, and they are going to be really hard to answer. But I'm trusting God that at the end of this video, all of us can have that clarity we've been seeking for. So if you're a believer, if you're an unbeliever, follow closely and maybe you can have that clarity that you so seek for. Question 1. If somebody is on a mountain or on a faraway land and they have not heard about Jesus, would they be saved? If somebody is on a mountain or on a faraway land and they have not heard about Jesus, would they be saved? Sometimes this question is framed like this: if somebody is on a mountain and they have not heard about Jesus, will they make it to heaven? Number 1, will they make it to heaven? Now that is a judgment. It is no longer a statement, the same as deciding whether they'll make it to heaven or they'll go to hell. The same thing you can say to someone, that you are going to hell, or she will go to heaven, or she will go to hell, he will go to heaven. Now we are warned against judging. Making judgments is not our work. Now that is the work of Jesus, because he will be the judge. In the book of Matthew chapter 7 verse 1 to 5, Jesus says, do not judge, lest with the same measure you judge, you will also be judged. So that question, if it was framed in such a manner as this, if somebody is on a mountain and they have not heard about Jesus, will they make it to heaven? Now that is an incorrect question. It should never be framed like that, because that then implies that you are the judge and you are deciding whether they make it to heaven or not. But rather, if somebody is on a mountain or a faraway land and they have not heard about Jesus, would they be saved? That is the correct way to ask that question. Now, answering this question now, if somebody is on a mountain or a faraway land and they have not heard about Jesus, would they be saved? Now, they have not heard about Jesus implies that they are still alive. And if they are still alive, that then means that the gospel of Jesus will get to them. So we believe that Jesus sends us to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. Jesus actually tells disciples, as I was sent by my Father, so now I send you also to preach to all Jerusalem, unto the ends of the earth. So wherever those people are, whether they're in caves, whether they are on islands, whether they are on faraway lands, to the ends of the earth, we believe as Christians that the gospel of Jesus will get to them, because God commanded that it gets to them. No matter where they are, the gospel of Jesus, it will ultimately get to them wherever they are. Now, moving on. Question 2. Why do Christians spread the gospel of Jesus? Why? The reason why we spread the gospel of Jesus is so that those people who have not heard about Jesus, they may also get the chance to learn about Jesus, to learn about his love, to learn about his ways, to learn about his sacrifice for humanity, and ultimately so that they may submit to Jesus and give their lives to Jesus, and that they will be saved and hopefully make it to heaven. So that is the reason why we preach the gospel to all nations, so that those people who have not had the chance to learn about Jesus, they may get to know him, and they may know him at a deeper level, and they may submit to Jesus and hand their lives to Jesus. This is the reason why we spread the gospel to the ends of the earth, because as Christians we believe that you cannot force love. There is free will in love. There is freedom in love. Every time you find a love that is controlled, it is no longer called love. Control brings fear. Control comes from fear. So you see these religions that have so much control, if you ever spot yourself in a religion that is filled with so much control, so fear is what brings control. And so where there is control, there is fear. But where there is love, there is no control. There is only freedom. But where there is fear, there is always control. So run away from love that has control in it. Run away from religions that have so much control in it, because in Christianity, we believe that you have the choice to learn about Jesus. You have that choice. You have that decision. You have that free will to choose Jesus, but freely. There is no forcing love in Christianity. No, love is making someone else be comfortable with choosing who they really want. If your heart is to serve Jesus and be with Jesus, then so be it. If your heart desires to reject Jesus, then so be it. We don't force love, but there are other religions that forces their religion on others. Be careful of those. So the reason why we preach the gospel of Jesus is so that everyone can have the opportunity to choose for themselves whether they want Jesus or not. Question 3. If they don't hear about Jesus, will they not make it to heaven? If they don't hear about Jesus, will they not make it to heaven? They is implying to those who have not heard about Jesus, and it's asking if they who have not heard about Jesus don't hear about Jesus, will they not make it to heaven? So if they don't hear about Jesus, will they not make it to heaven? And again, I've said that we do not know who will make it to heaven, who will not make it to heaven. Rather, we believe what Jesus says, that he is the way to heaven. He is the only way. He is that door that leads to heaven, because no one gets to the Father except through him. So Jesus confesses and testifies that he only is the way to heaven. He is the only way to be saved. He is the only way to God. He testifies this of himself. And so will they not make it to heaven if they don't hear about Jesus? Is false, because number one, we do not know who will make it to heaven. That is for the king to decide. But what we know is, if they who have not heard about Jesus, if they hear about Jesus and they reject Jesus, then they will not be saved, and they are on their way to separation of Christ, that is hell. But if they hear about Jesus and receive Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior, then they have found their way to salvation, they have been saved, and they have already found their way to heaven. So I hope that answers that question. Question 4. Is it not better for you Christians to stop preaching the gospel of Jesus? In this way, they who have not heard about the gospel of Jesus will make it to heaven. And again, we do not know who will make it to heaven, who will not make it to heaven, but we know the way to heaven is through Jesus, by following his ways, by living in his ways, by having encounters with him every day, by just being saved, by receiving Jesus in your life. That is the way you make it to heaven. But we do not decide who will make it to heaven, who will not make it to heaven. Matthew chapter 7 verse 1 to 5 warns us against making those judgments. Answer these kinds of questions. You have to be very careful when answering them, so that we do not judge others. The same way we judge others is the same way we shall be judged unto us with the same measure. But answering this question, that would it not be better for us Christians to stop preaching the gospel of Jesus? Then in this manner, they who do not know Jesus will be saved. And the response I can give to this answer is no. Jesus says, my sheep listen to my voice, I know them and they follow me. So every time we go to preach the gospel of Jesus to the ends of the earth, what we are really doing is we are preaching so that the sheep of Jesus, the lost sheep of Jesus, hear of the gospel and come back home, come back to his presence, come back to Jesus, receive Jesus in their life, because they have always been the sheep of Jesus. But those who do not belong to Jesus, from the very first time that they will hear of the gospel of Jesus, they will reject the gospel of Jesus. They will reject Jesus. They will reject everything that Jesus stands for. One day, Jesus sends his disciples to go and preach the gospel to the neighboring cities. And this is what Jesus tells his disciples. Before you start preaching the gospel, declare your peace to them. And if my peace is in them, then they will receive you. But if my peace is not found in them, then they will reject you. So the same principle applies to today's evangelism, how we do ministry. Every time we go to preach the gospel of Jesus to a certain group of people and they reject the gospel, is because that the peace of Jesus is not in them. But every time we go and preach the gospel of Jesus and they receive the gospel of Jesus, is because the peace of Jesus has always been in them. I hope that answers question 4. And now moving to question 5. Question 5 is asking, if somebody was on a mountain and they never heard about Jesus when they were alive, will they still be saved? Now, this is a very difficult question to answer, but how I can answer this question 5 is, for those who are alive and died without knowing about Jesus, the answer to this question is, God is a fair God. God is a just God. And God being a just judge, a just God, I believe that God will judge them fairly. Christians are always preaching the gospel of Jesus, so that many people on this earth, they may know the gospel of Jesus, and they may make a choice. They may make that decision before they die. They may get to accept Jesus or reject Jesus. So I hope this answers question 5.